Good afternoon, everyone. Welcome to today's presentation. My presentation is on a book chapter that I've written on the Afghanistan government in exile. To give you background, Afghanistan is such a prime real estate in the world. It's sitting in the middle between Central Asia, South Asia, and Middle East. It is rich, it has rich underground resources, it has young, smart, dedicated population, which is of interest to great powers. And it has been of interest to great powers in the past. In the previous century, we were a battleground between the Soviet Union and the United States, and the early century between United States and all of the global terrorists and other regionalist spoilers. That we saw how all of these clashes led to the emergence of the Taliban with the support of Russia, which is their founder country. And as a result, when the Taliban took over Afghanistan in the 1990s, Afghanistan experienced for the first time a government in exile, which was a government led by former President Professor Rabbani, which moved into Tajikistan, where they had control over all of the embassies and representation of Afghanistan abroad. And that was the first instance that Afghanistan experienced a government in exile. And that government continued until the fall of the Taliban regime in 2001, when the United States and coalition intervened, and they moved into Kabul and joined this new constitutional process that opened up, that led to democracy, elections, and the rest of it. However, the regional countries, the proxies, they continued to meddle into the affairs of Afghanistan. They discredited Afghans' elections. They eventually created a condition whereby we had to create a national unity government in Afghanistan, and they were unable to tackle the challenges of the country, security particularly. And as a result, the idea of negotiating with Taliban, which are a terrorist organization and also proxy of Russia, came up, and that process did not go anywhere. And we saw the collapse of our constitutional democratic framework in 2021. And the Taliban takeover of the country, where they have created an acting government, which is a legitimate government, and no country has recognized them except one country, which is their founder, that is Russia. Since all of the former leaders of Afghanistan, which were the presidents, for vice presidents, ministers, officials, leaders, all of them came out of the country, but we do not have a government in exile. For some reason. And so this book chapter is exploring the challenges of why do we not have a government in exile, and how can we go on about having a government in exile for Afghanistan. And so the challenges that is listed in two categories, following the pattern of the earlier speaker, is internal challenges and external challenges for not having a government in exile yet. The internal challenges, it starts from our lack of unity. A lot of efforts were put into place by various actors in the Afghan diaspora and politicians in exile, or activists in exile, women leaders, youth leaders, diplomats, but we are yet to be united under a central command. Even the resistance, those who are fighting the Taliban, operationally, technically, they cooperate with each other, but strategically, there is no strategic command where they could cooperate with each other as a one unified anti-Taliban front. And so politically as well, we see the fragmentation, and we have not been able to have a government in exile. In the meantime, Afghans are suffering inside the country because all of their rights are denied. There's no space for them to speak. There is no space for them to raise out their voices for whatever demands that they have. And so their only hope is for the Afghans in exile, for them to be able to establish a representative body so we could amplify their voices abroad. That's the only hope that we have, and we haven't been able to do so. The second challenge is the financial resources. Afghans have not been able to gather enough financial resources for political activities abroad. The businessmen are unable to get their money out of the country. So there's a lot of limitations, and Afghans who are doing political activities are only doing it through non-profit entities, through think tanks, and some limited resources that are also shrinking away from Afghans, unfortunately. So we don't have that as well. And the third challenge has been the centralized leadership, of course. As I said, we are yet to be able to agree on an individual or a group that could represent all of the anti-Taliban Afghans abroad, that could help with the establishment of a government in exile. And of course, the other challenge that we have is legitimacy. Who would speak on behalf of Afghanistan, and how legitimate will they be? the former president, Ashraf Ghani, when he fled, they conceded in a way that the Afghan Republic is done and we are done. But then afterwards, he started speaking as if he's the president. But then he did not indicate as if what that means. If you're a president, where is your government? Where is your cabinet? And the first vice president indicated that he's the president when on August 15, when he was in Panjshir. Like when he got out of Afghanistan as well, he did not mention what's the framework. Where is the government in exile? And so Afghans are left in limbo with no representation, unfortunately, outside the country. And of course, on approaches, the Afghans are divided on what to do with the Taliban. There are those who are advocating for fighting against Taliban. And we need to go and eliminate and kill these terrorists. We need to arrest them and we need to topple the regime. But there is still those who are still hoping that maybe there could be some negotiation with these terrorists. And they haven't been able to indicate a single sign that this terrorist group is willing to negotiate with the rest of Afghans. And they have not been able to. Because in the past 30 years of the existence of the Taliban terrorists, they have not negotiated with a single Afghan group or individual over the fate of Afghanistan. So that pact is non-realistic. And so the only other pact that is now getting momentum among Afghans is the possibility of having a people's uprising. The people of Afghanistan, the millions of Afghans inside the country and throughout the provinces, if they could rise up, then we could topple the Taliban regime, and maybe that could be the solution. But still, we are yet to agree on a clear approach to tackling the Taliban, and that has been a challenge. And of course, external challenges, there's no host government, there's no host country. The only country that right now anti-Taliban activities are permitted is Tajikistan in the neighborhood of Afghanistan, and that's very limited. There were some space in Turkey, and that has been shrunk. And so that has been a challenge. And of course, the other side, the support of Russia, China, Iran, and Pakistan, all of them supporting the Taliban and denying Afghans any space in the region to cooperate, to gather, or to speak has been a challenge that we can attribute to the external challenges of creating a government in exile. And of course, the global focus has been shifted. The issue of Ukraine has happened, the issue in the Middle East has happened, and the international community is more focused on those issues than focusing on Afghanistan issues. However, what I'm proposing in this book chapter is that there is a pathway, and the pathway is establishing the political office for anti-Taliban Afghans in one of the most anti-Taliban capital in the world, and that is Washington, D.C. This Washington, D.C. could host a political office for anti-Taliban Afghans that could be a stepping stone moving towards establishing a government in exile. And I propose in the book chapter that given the restrictive policy of the Taliban, given the fact that the Taliban have denied half of our population their basic rights, that they've basically created a gender apartheid regime in Afghanistan, their true opposition, their real opposition, undoubtedly is Afghan women, and so that political office has to be led by an Afghan woman, so that we could indicate to the world that what are we fighting for, and who are the people who are fighting, and what type of an individual could represent Afghanistan. It would be a woman that could lead the anti-Taliban Afghans, and that woman will be able to unify all of the various factions of Afghans to come together in order to agree on a particular specific approach, whether fighting the Taliban through arms or going through the route of people's uprising. And of course, we can easily manage and sustain that political office because we have $9 billion US that is frozen by the United States and their international allies. And if they could unfreeze that money and give it to this political office, and eventually that office could be transitioned and a government in exile could be established, we could use that fund in order to procure arms, ammunition, if we want to fight Taliban, or through other means, getting rid of Taliban in a people's uprising process. And there's a lot of benefits of having a political office.
Amini, sorry to interrupt. You have 3 minutes left. Sorry.
Okay, I will be much more faster than I'm speaking right now. The benefits of political office, it will help us have a centralized advocacy and information operations center where we could unify through a unified channel. We could advocate for Afghanistan, what we want for the country. And also it will help rally around international allies of Afghanistan, those who are friends of Afghanistan, those who care about Afghanistan. We could unify them, we could unify our people, and also basically put the fight, the real fight that is in front of Afghanistan. One side, the Taliban, denying the rights of the Afghans, denying the right of women, denying the right of minorities, denying their freedom. That is one side of the battle in Afghanistan. The other side is the anti-Taliban, is standing firm on the principle of rights for every single Afghan, men and women, equally, justice, based on justice and equality, and a fair share for Afghan women. More than 50% of the power and representation in the next government post-Taliban collapse should be given to Afghan women in order for us to indicate that we are committed to this new path ahead for Afghanistan. And of course, there's a history of Afghans believing in democratic principles, whether that is jirgas, loy jirgas, and local elections that we could utilize in order to resolve any differences that we have.